hope that, and I hope that as you know, the projects, the ideas, and the activities that I do are examples and can inspire you to think of your creative minds to see how you can adapt some of these ideas and projects into for the folks in Minnesota. Um, so, you know, intersectionality is really core, and I've come to really value intersectionality because it is part of all of us. None of us are just one thing, and that's one of my pet peeves of looking back at a variety of disability conferences, workshop discussions, panels, informational things is that I I tend to I came away with a lot of those um, with the feeling of they frame disability as a siloed separate thing, and we're not. I myself am identify as an Asian American immigrant with disabilities. I'm Korean American. Um, I went to school, college educated. I work. I have a couple of disabilities. I have family connections, sexual orientation, faith community. I'm now middle aged. So we all intersect with multitudes of identities. And as we go through life, some of our identities change, and those are perfectly okay. And so I really value and was just thrilled to hear, you know, people's perspectives on the importance of intersectionality, both of how diverse and rich Minnesota is, of its cultural diversity and intersecting identities, and the recognition that you know there are still folks in marginalized communities who intersect with disability, and there is work to be done to make sure that underserved people with disabilities who have intersecting identities are reached out to, are communicated, are found ways of trying to support them and bring them into our larger disability justice community. Because one thing that I value from a lot of the disability leaders and mentors and friends that I've had the honor of being part of is the overall sense of we want disability inclusion for all disabilities, and extending to that is all communities, which is in a nutshell the heart of of our motto, nothing about us without us. And if we strive to pursue that, we have to acknowledge disability is in all communities: race, gender, ethnic, socioeconomic, faith traditions, geographic locations, language, culture, all of those. Um, so just as a quick primer of who I am. So as I said, I'm Asian American. This is a pic on the screen is two pictures. On the left is a picture of, I think I was in third grade trying to play the clarinet. And then on the right is a picture of me on a on a bicycle as a maybe like a again like in third grade, fourth grade, uh, jumping a ramp. At this age, I had no idea I had a disability. I played around and rode bikes, jumped, had all that kind of fun. Um, when I went through like third grade is when I was diagnosed with a disability. On this slide is a picture of my high school graduation. It's me in the center and my mom and dad on each side of me in my uh, graduation cap and gown with a red curtain background. And when I discovered when disability became part of my identity back and I was in elementary school, junior high, and high school in the late 70s through the late 80s. So I'm 53. So I was in elementary, junior high, and high school right after, shortly after 504 and pre-ADA. But being having being someone being a child who looks Asian, who also had very thick plastic rimmed glasses, and was then also labeled disabled, low vision, visually impaired. It layered a lot of intersecting identities. It also added a lot of intersecting stereotypes that led to bullying. So, although I had some good friends, as we can all probably can reflect, a lot there because of stereotypes around Asians, immigrants, stereotypes around disability, stereotypes around vision impairments. There, none of them, or very rare of them, are very positive. Um, but I look back on that those difficult times. They did shape me and pushed me through high school, through college, to pursue social justice work. I wasn't quite sure what to call it, but I did have a desire to help kids like me, kids and people and communities that were bullied, that had hardship. I wanted to do something to help. And at the same time, as I got into college, I had my self advocacy kind of introduction or self advocacy awakening. Um, until college, um, and some of the I wasn't very much of a an assertive person or an assertive individual. Some of that was, I think, is my personality at the time, but also some of that was also shaped by my family and Asian cultural values. In broadly speaking, the idea of you need to follow authority, respect your elders, respecting professionals and whatnot. So I had this belief or this idea that, oh, my teachers, my professors, my vision folks will give me what I need to do. Won't have to push for it. And then when I got to college, I went to college at Northern Illinois University in Illinois. And on the slide is a picture of our NIU logo, which is kind of like a castle top thing with little points. And then on the lower right-hand corner is a picture of our kind of our NIU's kind of quad area with some dorms and our main student center in the back tower. And I met some amazing disabled peers, fellow students, and amazing.
Hi, I don't mean to interrupt, but could we have the ASL interpreter pinned as well? Thanks.
Oh,
Sorry.
No worries.
Hi, this is Angela speaking. Al, can you turn your, oh, there it goes. Okay, now I can get you. So sorry about that, folks. Thanks for saying something.
Yes, thank you. So, yeah, so in college, I met some amazing mentors and disabled leaders that really helped me and educated me and encouraged me to, for one, help me realize disability isn't a bad identity. In and of itself, being disabled isn't a bad thing. It's just a different part of who I am. They helped me to claim my disability identity and start on the road for me to really embrace it and be proud of it. And I'm happy and thrilled to say that today, I proudly disclose and share to anyone that wants to know, and maybe some that don't, that disability is a proud identity of mine. And then they also, taught me and motivated me the importance for us to speak up. That yes, as marginalized folks, as disabled folks, and then for me as an Asian American immigrant, because we're marginalized, we need to be more assertive to get what we want, to fight for fair access, for equitable access to services and resources, that the systems aren't really fair. So again, all of that helped me to, again, grow in my understanding of disability, the disability community, and how richly diverse it is, and how it can be a support system, and the power of self-advocacy and helping other disabled folks to realize their voice, help them find their voice, and to just simply be assertive for what we are all entitled to as human beings. And all of that shaped me, again, kept shaping me to the work that I did. I still wanted to do just a social justice work. And for the first 20 years of my social service, social justice career, I worked in the areas of mental health, trauma, and gender-based violence awareness and prevention. And then throughout that, at the time, I didn't the concept of intersectionality wasn't there, but I remember I tried to find ways of engaging different communities. Of when I was doing presentations on domestic violence awareness or sexual assault and abuse prevention and awareness and resources, to try to connect with different communities, and then and eventually connecting with my disability community. And then, when Kimberly Crenshaw's information and her writings and her teachings came out, it helped me put a name to this idea and the importance of it, because again, we don't exist in silos. We blend as human beings. And in recent years, for the past 10 years or so, 10, 15 years, I've worked on issues of immigration justice, mental health, and disability justice. And one of my core values, and the things that I keep trying to remind myself, is the value of intersectionality. I learn from different communities I connect with. And I hope that I can be a source of information and a resource for them. But valuing difference, valuing intersectionality, finding ways of working together. And from our perspective, from the disability community, disability intersects with everything, no matter how old you are, what faith tradition you practice, what language, what culture, what part of town, how much money you have or don't have. Disability is there. What your gender identity, your sexual orientation, all the different spectrums of identity and existence, disability is there in some way, shape, or form. And if we in the disability community want to work toward building accessible systems, we need to value and acknowledge intersectionality. On the screen are examples, some of the work that and projects I've been part of. So there's 3 images. The big image on the right is I was part of a big, huge protest in the last couple of years around immigration. That was coordinated by a large Illinois statewide coalition of immigrant justice providers, pushing for citizenship for all. On the upper left-hand corner is a picture of, again, that same rally of a big parade where hundreds of people walk signs, sending a message to our legislators that they should push through positive immigrant justice legislation. And then on the lower left-hand corners there's one picture from an event that I was part of where we shared stories and conversation around disability in the Asian American community. And then in the center bottom is a picture of folks from another immigration justice rally that have individuals with disability from the disability community also marching and participating as well. So again, it is an example of how disability intersects with different communities and different issues. So, and again, on this slide, on the top, there's 2 examples of 2 big projects that I was part of. On the top upper right-hand corner is a stylized logo of a project called Pride, which stood for Partnerships for Refugee and Immigrants with Disabilities and Employment. This was a project that worked to connect with refugees arriving in Illinois with disabilities to help them connect to disability resources and to help them increase their chances of getting employment. Our project worked with a variety of cultural and linguistic based organizations from a variety of cultural communities and ethnic communities, from South Asian to Latinx communities to African communities who have the expertise and understanding of culture, cultural values, traditions, and language. And we pulled them and disability experts, Centers for Independent Living, disability employment experts and programs, brought them together to help work together so that these individuals who are newly arrived are able to better navigate both systems. We had some success with that. On the bottom half of the slide are pictures of and the logo of another project called the Asian Americans with Disabilities Outreach Project Think Tank, or ADOPT. And that project, similarly, like Pride, was a project where we reached out to the Asian American community and connected them and brought them together with the Illinois State Vocational Rehab Program, again, to better support Asian Americans with disabilities accessing voc rehab services, because the research and the data that we found showed a huge disparity between the population of Asian Americans with disabilities and actually accessing services. So with language, culture, and disability, trying to and doing outreach presentations, addressing stigma, trying to dispel stigma. At the end of the project, we found some improvement as well. And then the pictures that are shown on the bottom center picture is a picture of some of our project team with members of various Asian American communities, leadership, as well as the former, in the center is Teresa Ma, who at the point was a member of the governor's staff and is currently an Illinois state legislator. On the lower left is a picture of our project team and meeting with some other community leaders on some projects. And then on the top images on the upper left-hand corner are images of our Pride, refugees with disabilities, planning meeting, and some of the stakeholders there. And then the top center picture is our Pride refugee participants who went through a training program with their certificates. So again, it's an illustration of how intersecting, specifically in my work, intersecting with my immigrant, refugee, and Asian American community identities and disability identities kind of work together to address an issue. And then these are just some pictures of, again, some other projects around disability and advocacy issues. So there's a picture of me holding a racism sign with my white cane. This was at a protest back in 2016, and joining a large protest against some of the racist rhetoric at the time from our former president around election time. And then there's also in the lower right hand corner is a picture of from a disability rally and march from a few years ago, and fighting against some proposed policy legislation. And there's a variety of folks from the disability community carrying a variety of signs with a variety of messages, pushing and shouting that we exist, that disability rights are human rights, that we have a right to equity and fair access and services. And similarly, there's the top right picture is another picture from another rally in March. And I think one of these is also from a reproductive rights event. And then these are some pictures, some other activities and how advocacy and disability, or how my identity as disability and some of my identities have intersected. One of the big things is the bottom right, the bottom center picture is a picture of taken of a lot of self-advocates from our disability community here locally in the Chicagoland area who worked tirelessly with state legislators. And a couple of years ago, because of the work, passed a new piece of legislation to address the police violence and the police killing of Black and Brown individuals with disabilities. This legislation, now law, is called the Community Emergency Services and Supports Act, or CESA, which basically makes it possible to create an alternative response system, so that if someone who is having a mental health crisis, who has a disability, who's having a behavioral crisis, they can call another number, not 911, and they can have a trained specialist come out who understands the disability or the mental health condition to help them stabilize and connect them to resources to avoid the police first response and the possibility of the individual being harmed or arrested when they don't have to be. So that's an image from the day that the governor signed it into law, and all of us kind of celebrating that or acknowledging that. And then the other pictures are, there's a picture of me talking with a legislator at Advocacy Day. And then the upper left-hand corner is a couple of self-advocates talking with legislative staffers, again, talking about some policy. So I'm going to kind of go through quickly. So that's kind of like my background. One of the key things about intersectionality is also the importance of partnership and collaborations. And one example in the Chicagoland area that I want to highlight is our Chicago Disability Pride Parade that I had the fortune of. That's where I had the fortune of meeting Mai. Is that the parade's been going on an annual basis for at least 18, 19 years, I believe. And even during the pandemic, when things were closed down, our disability community found a way to have it virtually, which I think I personally am very proud of their commitment and that creativity. But the idea of the idea of the parade is to celebrate our disability community and our diversity in all its intersecting identities. And as part of the parade, we have people who participate from all disability communities, all diverse cultural, linguistic, faith traditions, socioeconomic, all different communities, and we welcome them. And the parade is organized and designed and organized and led by people from our disability community. And we have, over the years, find ways of connecting and getting sponsors. So we have, organizations, healthcare organizations, private companies, as well as disability organizations and other nonprofits sponsor and participate in the parade. And I think that's, that type of activity can be something that Minnesota does, or in different parts of Minnesota, is if there is a core group in a region or in a city, start there and work with the city departments, work with and build up momentum by connecting and building partnerships, building relationships from the different disability communities, cultural communities, and see if there's interest or the possibility of moving toward working together to organize a parade, to recognize the diversity and the pride of our disability community. The as mentioned, I am a co-founder of the Chicagoland Disabled People of Color Coalition, and this came about because my co-founder TJ and we met, and he was doing a project for a graduate class on people of color and disability. And the more that we talked, the more that on my end, I realized, we don't have a lot of representation of people that look like me, look like him, look like people of color, sharing our stories, our experiences, how our lived experience of living the intersecting identities of disabled, of color, and dealing with disability stigma, racism, the challenges that poses, as well as hearing positive stories of how people of color celebrate their cultural heritage, both their race and ethnic culture, as well as our disability culture. So we formed DPOC to do that. So we hear concerns and issues from our disabled communities of color. We find ways of holding town halls, meetings, presentations. For the last few years, our kind of like cornerstone activities is with the recognition of Juneteenth, We hold annual Juneteenth celebrations. We've also been holding annual, so kind of having a vigil for the annual Community Day of Mourning to recognize those individuals who have, from our disabled community, who have died. And in recent years, because of COVID, we've done a lot of work on COVID, sharing information around COVID-19 and resources, and highlighting resources for the communities of color. And we do that, again, through understanding and valuing intersectionality, and along with that, connecting with our community partners, whether that be other centers of independent living, health centers and healthcare providers, and also some getting involved in local and state boards and committees that have say so over policy. Again, if we are part of that table and we bring our disability identity, our racial identity, our sexual orientation identity, our cultural perspectives, we can influence how policy is crafted, and we can also influence messaging. And one of the things that we pushed, that I always push, is when any big campaign is pushed out, on the graphics, is there representation of individuals that look like me? Is there anyone that I can connect with that looks Asian, that looks like an immigrant, that looks disabled, or not? And if there's not, then we have conversations. But that's the power of valuing intersectionality and finding ways of participating. And the last couple of things, again, is just as a reminder, just how all the differences of intersecting identities that we all have. And then some ideas that have been valued for us is, and that some of you have already mentioned, is start to connect to communities of color and different diverse communities in your areas of Minnesota. Connect with, different community centers, different faith institutions, that if you have colleagues or friends or acquaintances from different communities, see if they can introduce you to other members of the community to start building conversations. And if there is reluctance, because there still is a lot of stigma on disability, take that as an opportunity to have a conversation, not to bulldoze and say, you are wrong, you need to let us in, but maybe if it's appropriate, having a gentler conversation of trying to understand their perspective and helping them and using a different approach, and maybe not an argumentative approach, to understand, to get them to change their perspective and demystify or dispel some of the negative associations around disability. Similar, and also sharing information. Invite them when you do these types of conversations around disability. And if there are members from communities of color, LGBTQ communities, different faith communities that you have connected with, invite them to these conversations and ask if you can attend their educational or informational events. Just by showing up and opening the door, I have found that those simple acts of invitation and freely sharing information, can be opportunities to build a positive relationship with one person. And then that one person can lead to 2 and 3 and maybe an institutional change. And the last thing I'll mention is again, just kind of connect with on a statewide level, connect with your statewide independent living councils, your councils for developmental disabilities, and other disability related boards and committees, as well as like healthcare, health and human services, those types of boards too, and find out, is there a disabled person on those boards? If not, ask why. If there's someone in the disability community that has an interest in doing and serving in those roles, encourage them to serve. And if there's pushback, push back and say, they're qualified, they want to serve, let them go through the process. Because our voices matter. And your state government needs disability representation on those boards. Because if they're not there, the policies, the procedures, the regulations, the laws that shape and affect our lives will not have our influence or our voice there. So with that, I'm right at time. So any questions? Did this make sense to you all? And I will, and looking to have access to my slides. This slide is my contact information. Please feel free to email, contact me. I'm more than happy to follow up with anybody. And let me stop my share. And is there any burning questions?
Yeah, thank you, Jaden. This is Mai again. I'm actually going to just say that we should be respectful of people's times and then also our ASL interpreters' times, and probably just end now. So if y'all have questions for Jaden, I would suggest that you email them directly to me and I can get them to you if that's okay. I can follow up with you, Jaden. But yeah, that was amazing. Really great suggestions and advice for us in Minnesota on how to do this work. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to the interpreters, Nancy and Al. It's always great to have y'all with us. And thank you all for being able to come together and gather again. Again, I will be in touch on next steps and also look for that survey for the summit. And you know, I hope you all have a great evening. It's going to be really nice this weekend, so get out and enjoy it if you can. And we will see you soon. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.